Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm José Miguel Rubio from the European Environment Agency. I'm not actually going to speak about the future of monitoring and reporting. I'm going to speak about the present of the monitoring and reporting of the implementation of the INSPIRE directive as it is done currently. And my colleagues from JRC and the environment will explain the next steps, as Vlado has said, on this monitoring and reporting. So my presentation is I'm going to give you a summary of the first results, or preliminary results, and I say preliminary because we don't have all the monitoring files from all the countries, but almost all of them are already there, so I think the results are quite, close to final. As you know, the legal background of this monitoring and reporting exercise stems from the Commission decision, which is implementing the Article 21 from the INSPIRE directive, requiring member states to provide information on monitoring and reporting on the implementation of the directive in the different countries. This year, it only concerns the monitoring and not the reporting obligation, which, as you know, is every 3 years. The monitoring obligation is an annual exercise, which deadline is on 15th of May, as you know, and refers to the information related to the previous year. As you know, the monitoring obligation concerns, obliges the member states to provide a list of spatial data sets and services, as well as the network services, as well to compute a series of indicators related to metadata, existence, conformity, accessibility, conformity of spatial data sets and services, and which is also very important, accessibility of data sets through services. Since 2013, this is a task which has been given to the EEA, which is using our reporting system, which is called ReportNet, to support member states in delivering this monitoring information, and since 2015 is an XML-based reporting. How this monitoring process actually works. Some of you, if you are a national reporter, may have had doubts, maybe in other years, about how things are done. We actually have sort of two workflows. One, which is the one you have with the number 1, is actually the traditional one in which member states create the monitoring file using maybe an Excel file or any kind of tool, and then they can use as well a web form which is available on the ReportNet. And then they create this XML monitoring file, which is uploaded into the national folder in ReportNet. Then there is the second workflow, which is the one which have been encouraged since a few years, which is by using the INSPIRE Dashboard Sandbox, which is this tool which was developed in order to harvest the National Discovery Service, to check the links between datasets and services, to validate the metadata, and to create the XML monitoring in an automated way based on the information out of the metadata that member states publish through the National Discovery Services. In any case, or either way, the information is made available through ReportNet, and then the EEA takes these files and publish them on what we call the official INSPIRE dashboard, which is public, and it provides the overview through a series of dashboards of the indicators and the information that EU member states are making available through the monitoring file. So what is the specifics of this year? Well, the deadline is the same this year as well. It was 15th of May. The data corresponds to the reference year of 2017. So far, when I did this presentation a few days ago, all EU countries but one had delivered the monitoring file. We ran a little survey in summer in order to see which countries had actually used the dashboard to harvest their national catalogs, also in view of the new developments about which Yuri and Vlado will speak later on. And we found out that 2/3 of the countries have used the sandbox that the EA provides, or a copy on their national systems. This year, we also provided a reporting guidance in order to guide you through the process, because we understand that, especially for me, who I'm quite new to this, it was a bit complicated. So I thought it was a good way to summarize the whole process in a guidance and to provide it to the national reporters. Also, we upgraded the dashboard. Now we are using Kibana. That took a bit more of time than expected. That's why there was a bit of delay in launching the call for of this monitoring of this year. It was in early February. We could not keep the previous dashboard because there was some problems of performance, stability. So we decided to wait until the system was migrated, so you could use it with reliability. Also, this new dashboard allows for direct referencing of the different dashboards that you can use in your own website. So all the information is available in the official dashboard. You have here the URL. There's a slight change which came with the migration, but I mean, you should be able to see all the information on the dashboard that I'm going to show here. So I'm going through a few of these indicators, information that I extracted directly from the dashboard. As I said, we just published the information that you provide us. So if you see any surprising information, it's something that we should go directly to the member states' national reporters. I would start with the total number of spatial datasets per country. You can see here the dashboard and the trends from 2010 till 2017. Well, one can argue whether this is a very meaningful indicator, because we know that in each country we have a different way of organizing the datasets, but I think it's somehow indicative that 95% of the datasets are reported just by 5 countries. You have them on the screen. There is a steady increase of the total number of reported datasets, 13% more with respect to last year. If we focus on the number of spatial datasets per annex, not surprisingly, we have more datasets for Annex 3, given we have far more number of data themes. There is an interesting increase of datasets available for Annex 2 and Annex 3. Annex 2, 30% with respect to last year, 15% in Annex 3. With respect to last year. The case of Annex 1, despite we have this last deadline on Annex 1 last year, we have only an increase of 8%, and 50% of the total number of spatial datasets belong to this Annex 1. If we look at the total number of spatial data services, maybe it's where you will find more changes. We see an important, very significant increase of the total number of reported services. Actually more than double with respect to last year, and this is basically due to a lot of effort done in particularly in one country, which has France, which has reported 10 times more services than in 2016. And as in the case of the spatial data sets, most of the services are made available by just 2 countries, 93% by France and Germany. If we look at the number of spatial data services by service type, well, yeah, unsurprisingly, most of the services are view services and download services. Around 57% are download services, 40% are view services. There is a significant increase in both, in any case, it's also because of this huge influx of services in last year. I think it's more interesting, I think it's good to have a look at the percentage of spatial datasets for which view, download, or both services exists, because despite we have an increase of in number of spatial datasets and services, an increase of datasets, the percentages on the number of spatial datasets which are available through services is, however, slightly decreasing. Actually, only 15% of the spatial datasets are reported to have view services. 40% are reported to have download services, and 37% of the spatial datasets have view and download services. please also take into account that the dashboard, I mean, it's not only what you are reporting as well, but with the dashboard is also doing some checks in the links between the datasets and the services. And this is used to create this dashboard. In the case of metadata conformity of spatial data services, we are little by little reaching the full conformance. We are still in 91%, but hopefully, if the trend is correct, we will reach the 100% sooner or later. In the context of network services, we are around 56%. On the other side, taking into account the huge increase of services that we have had this year, it looks that most of the services that have been reported are conformance services, because we have actually an increase in the conformance in the network services. And the last of the indicators that I wanted to show is the number of conformant spatial datasets per annex. We have an increase in absolute numbers of the conformant spatial datasets. We have 26% more spatial datasets which are conformant. Slightly increase in Annex 1, despite, again, we had this deadline, 9%. An important increase in Annex 2 and Annex 3, which I think is good news, around 48%. And then if we compare to the total number of spatial datasets which have been reported, however, we only have 17% of the total datasets which are reported to be conformant. We are around 51% in Annex 1, but only around 10% in Annex 2 and Annex 3. Last year, the rate of conformance was around 15%, so we are going from 15 to 17, but still very, I would say, a bit of a slow progress. Just before I conclude, I wanted just to make mention to a little survey that we did in July with the national reporters of the monitoring tools, usability and performance. We'd like to thank 22 countries which actually took the time to respond, just to know whether you have used the dashboard, because as I showed before, there were two workflows. Using the dashboard and harvesting your catalog is not compulsory at this stage, but fortunately, more than, I would say 2/3 of the member states use the dashboard. Most of them use the dashboard.ea put at their disposal. Also, some of them, they also have their own national applications. And also, it's good to see that we had this web form in the reporting that is also used. We also wanted to know whether there were some issues that you saw when using the dashboard in order to improve either in the current status or in the future system. We found out that, that was a common issue that I'm sure if you are a national reporter, you struggle with, is the fact that the system doesn't notify when the harvesting is complete. This was an issue that many of you had some issues with. I would like to thank, because you had positive words about the guidance and support that the EA has been given. It's true that the information was sent a bit late, but I hope it didn't really have a final impact or lasting impact in your work. It's true that there's still some manual work to do, and so this is something we have to think about for the future of the monitoring system. And, well, some of you have been using your own system, not using the dashboard, but your own system which actually satisfies your needs in order to create the monitoring file. So initial conclusions, with all this information that I have given to you, this actually more personal conclusions out of what I checked when I was doing the presentation. There's clearly, as I have said, a steady increase of total number of datasets, but actually most of them are reported by only 5 countries. The number of services is also, very significantly increased, but this is, again, only due to 1 or 2 countries. And what is maybe a matter of concern, and it's important to take into account, is the low availability of datasets through network services. Only 1 out of 3 have this both download and view services. we are reaching full conformity in metadata, but we are very slowly in conformance in services and in data harmonization. Actually, only less than 60% of network services are reported to be compliant, and only half of Annex 1 datasets, despite deadlines are laying in the past. And again, we see that most of the countries are actually ready to take this official step towards having the harvest their catalog for the monitoring. So this is a good sign for the future evolution and the development of the new monitoring information system. So I think that's all what I wanted to say. Thanks for your attention. Yeah, if you have any quick question, I'm ready to try to respond. Yeah, I think, thank you.
Thank you, Jose. I see one question there.
François Dumortier from Belgium. I would like to come back to the number you gave about the number of data sets that are reported and increasingly reported for 5 countries.
Yeah.
But if I take the Belgian case, and I just take geology, we 4 different parties report geological information. One of them gives many data sets, but in fact, they are all providing the necessary information. The difference is one of the parties split its data set into several layers, so the number of total data sets does not give any interesting information. It would be more interesting, in my opinion, to give percentage of conformity, for instance, rather to focus on the number of data sets.
Yeah, I mean, I made the comment already. I think it's a very valid point. Every country or every region organized in a different way, and maybe you have all the data sets split. Other countries, maybe they have all together in only one record. Yeah, I would agree that it's an indicator that I'm not sure how meaningful it actually is. Yeah.
Thank you, Jose. I think maybe one more question, if there is. Okay.
Thank you. Andreas Hagiraftis from Cyprus. Is there a way to report the percentage of coverage per theme, per country?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand at the beginning.
Is there a way to report the percentage of coverage?
To import?
Per theme,
report.
per country. The percentage, just percentage, not the actual data sets.
I mean, we haven't actually implemented this in the dashboard. I'm not sure if we could actually get it out of the raw data. I mean, I don't know it by heart, but I'm sure not all countries have been systematically reporting this information. So as we have had all the discussion about the usability or the meaning of this coverage, we really didn't focus on providing this information on the dashboard, but we could see whether we could do something ad hoc to show this information. But I would say that many countries have actually put aside this indicator and not reported it since a few years.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Vlado. Yeah, new regulation. You said I got some good news and some bad news. It said initially the INSPIRE new regulation on monitoring and reporting. It doesn't say this anymore, because when we did this a few months ago, we actually hoped for that we would have a new regulation by now. But this is not the case. We're still discussing this. So the good news is I can give you an update on the file that is progressing very good. So we will have further discussions by the end of the year, and hopefully we come to a conclusion end of this year, beginning of next year. So the INSPIRE monitoring and reporting, first of all, yeah, there we are. So what are the drivers? So we were looking at the new monitoring and reporting regulation. Why? We had some, within the policy context, some policy drivers that when we evaluated the INSPIRE directive in 2016. So we did a midterm evaluation. We also did the refit evaluation. The outcome of those evaluations was that we should simplify the INSPIRE implementation, simplify INSPIRE overall to get better implementation results. So one of the outcomes that was also translated in the maintenance implementation work program 2017-2020. Another policy initiative was the better regulation fitness check on environmental monitoring and reporting. So the Commission was doing, when we did Commission Juncker's entered, we did a full refit exercise on the existing legislations, on the effectiveness of the legislation. So we did what we called the refit exercise. And one of these refit exercises was very focused on monitoring and reporting, including INSPIRE reporting. Now, coming from the fitness check on the environmental monitoring and reporting were some recommendations. One of it was that we should focus on the priority EU use case, and that means that we have to focus on the environmental information that is being reported under the environmental acquis. So under the legislation that is being managed by DG Environment. That's one of the recommendations. The other one was that we have to streamline the reporting process in the order to minimize as much as possible the administrative burden. And finally, we had this fitness check action plan with several actions that are, well, more or less relevant to the new reporting regulation as well, because one of the actions is the alignment proposal that tries to align and streamline some of the reporting obligations under the environmental acquis, including, again, INSPIRE directive, with a focus on the Article 21 and 23 of the INSPIRE directive. So the alignment proposal actually proposes that we should get rid of the triannual implementation by the member states. But that's something that's going on, as being discussed by Council for the moment, and we'll go in triad, so in further debate between Parliament and Council in the coming months, and hopefully will end in a successful way by the end of the year. And this will help us to get rid of the triannual implementation by the member states, which is the big file that you have to write every 3 years on the use of your infrastructure, on the cost benefits, things like that. So we will try to replace that one as well to release you from that burden. Now, a lot of the input for this new regulation is coming from 2 work groups that we had in the past under the MIC. That's the MIWP 16, which did the preparatory exercise on how we could improve and facilitate and simplify monitoring and reporting. And we picked the work from that work group up last year with the work group called Activity 2016-2, Monitoring and Reporting 2019. So that work group did the final analysis and did the recommendations on which indicators we have to drop, which would be a more feasible way to implement monitoring and reporting for the member states, releasing some of the burden. And that's what we picked up, and then we started drafting a legal act, a new legal act. Now, well, first of all, let's come back to the findings of the 2016-2 work group. So there was room for improvement on the current monitoring and reporting decision. So first of all of the information we're asking contains a lot, for the moment, a lot of non-comparable textual information. If you pick up an implementation report of the member states, if you pick up 2 implementation reports, and you read them and you compare them, there's little to compare. There's a lot of text in there with different context, different interpretation of the questions. So this was a very big exercise, both for the member states to provide these reports in all good faith, and both on our sides to read these reports and make something meaningful out of it. So that's something, was a clear indication that this doesn't really help us and we should get rid of it. It didn't really help us for the refit exercise of INSPIRE as well. So that's what, then we made the conclusion that we should get rid of this implementation report. We also agreed that if we should collect information, we shouldn't collect them in Excel files being reported by member states. So we have to look for a more easier and comparable and less burdensome way. And we found an answer to that one. We come back to that one. And we also looked at the indicators. We had 48 indicators, and most of the indicators, well, didn't really help us in evaluating the effectiveness of the INSPIRE directive. So there was also a good indicator for reviewing the current monitoring and reporting regulation. So what's the ambition level? What's the objectives of the review that we're trying to achieve here? So first and for all, we want to simplify monitoring and reporting. Support better comparison of the implementation progress across member states. So when we did refit exercise, it was very difficult to compare different member states or the progress in different member states. First of all, data made available by member states is kind of ad hoc. You all decide on yourself which data you identified and you make available in your infrastructure. So it was difficult to compare based on the data sets. Quality of metadata. So we had a lot of issues over the last 2 years to make a decent comparison between the effort made in the different member states and have an EU overview. So we want to improve the comparability of the reporting. We also want to allow for national but also the EU-wide overviews. That goes hand in hand with the comparability. So when it's difficult to compare different member states, then it's also difficult to make an EU overview report. Reducing the administrative monitoring and reporting burden, that was a big one, and fine-tune the existing reporting indicators and to make them more fit for purpose, in the sense that we are collecting a lot of indicators. Some of the indicators just say, well, let's count the amount of data sets made available, so that doesn't mean much. So there are member states with a lot of maturity who have minimized the amount of data sets, but are only providing national data sets. So they have a small amount of data sets being provided, but could be more mature than a member state that provides a lot of local data sets which are not coordinated, so things like that. So on the, so on the key principles of the proposed regulation, it's unfortunate that I can't show, because if you would have approved the regulation by now, I would have gone through the regulation with you, but now I'm leaving it a bit in the abstract, and I'll give you some key principles on the review of the proposed regulation. So first and for all, we're going to use metadata as the main driver for reporting and monitoring. It's once only in the sense that if you provide the metadata as an INSPIRE obligation, you already provide most of the information that we need to assess your progress on implementation. So we're going to reuse the metadata. So that's the reuse activity. That's the once only. You provide the metadata, you report, and you monitor at the same time. And we will also support active dissemination in a way that we're actually going to use your discovery services. So we're not going to ask you to push an Excel file to the Commission to report it. No, you already provide your discovery services with your metadata. And these are the harvesting points that we can use to actually calculate indicators. Whether it's the member state themselves who will calculate the indicators, whether it's the Commission who will, in the GEO portal, will calculate the indicators, or whether it's the Commission who will calculate and sends the calculations to the member states for validation, that's still open. That's part of the implementation process that we will discuss further on in the new work group, but that's something that we have to, we figured it out already, so it's all in there in the process, but I think that's still up for discussion in the MIC, in the committee for the coming months. So one's only principle by reusing the metadata, revised set of indicators. And I'll come back to those indicators in the next slide. And then we also start using country fishes, because we said we would like to drop the tri-annual implementation report, but we want something in return for this one, or replace it by what we call the country fishes. And people who were in this session last year, we also had a monitoring and reporting session in Strasbourg last year on the conference, already saw the first country fishes when we released them. So I hope, if you haven't seen it, I have provided the link in the presentation as well. But the country fishes more or like have three big parts. So the first part is on the static reporting part, which addresses your coordination setup in the member state, which also addresses the use of the infrastructure, the cost benefits, so these static things which are in the Article 21.2 of the INSPIRE directive that you have to report on. So we already got the information from your implementation report, and it's more or less fixed. It doesn't change every year. So when it's changed, we will ask you to update this information, but you don't have to report to us over and over again. So the second part is then using the metadata to calculate the monitoring indicators. And the third part is then the assessment that the Commission does of the progress you make on the implementation. That's also a new thing, because in the past we didn't give you any feedback. You provided the reports, and then we gave the overview report, but now you will get feedback on your country fish in the future. And when you provide the yearly reporting, or we do the yearly calculation of the monitoring indicators, we'll also do a small assessment of the progress you made, so you get some guidelines, some recommendations as well immediately every year. So that should help you on the implementation progress. So the indicators, we started out with the original monitoring and reporting regulation. Well, as it is right now, we have 48 indicators in there. We dropped 32 indicators, and we added 3 new ones. So we end up with a total of 19 indicators right now, and three new indicators that have been introduced, which are now also the area of discussion with the member states in the different bodies that we have, both in the maintenance implementation expert group as in the Commission. So 3 new indicators. One indicator that actually identifies the number of data sets that are being used for reporting under the environmental acquis. That is very solidly linked to another initiative that we have on the priority data sets. So we made a list of priority data sets, which is then actually is a list of 90+ data sets that are linked to reporting obligations that member states have under the environmental acquis. So for example, under the under the Water Framework Directive, you have to report the monitoring facility for the quality of the water. Well, that's a data set under the Water Framework Directive that we will ask you to report on. You're already reporting this to the EEA or any other organization that's responsible for the acquisition of reporting information. And we now also ask you to actually provide this under INSPIRE as well. in the sense that together with the EEA, we're also working on an update of ReportNet, and we hope that in the future then we can use active dissemination for reporting. So if you provide the data sets that you report already to the Commission on the different directives, and in the future we can use INSPIRE as a reporting process, then we can also harvest your data from your services, rather than you have to push on a yearly, 3-yearly, 5-yearly basis data to Commission. But that's the new reporting, e-reporting that we want to get to, and that's the more active dissemination from member states, so that you don't have to push the data anymore. So that's the overall story on the indicators on the priority data sets, and then we added also 2 other indicators. I think more or less in line with the discussion we just had on the spatial coverage. That's true. We had an indicator on spatial coverage for the past 9 years. Nobody supplied one. Everybody covered the area for 100%. I mean, we checked, it never covered for 100%, so it didn't mean anything. Over all these years, this was a worthless indicator. So we said we're going to drop this, but still it's very important that we have an idea of the coverage of your data set. And not only the coverage of your data set, but also the constitutional setup, so in your member state. So actually also at the same time, coverage, but also the coordination setup. So we actually try to introduce now 2 keywords. Now, let me be sure on the first one as well. This new indicator has to be provided in metadata by providing an additional keyword. So you have metadata keywords. In the current metadata regulation, there's the only obligation to provide 1 mandatory keyword. Now, in the reporting obligation, we added these 3 new indicators, which have to be provided as keywords in the metadata. We agreed on using metadata as a usable component for reporting. So the only way we can get data from the member states is through the metadata. So it's normal that if we add a keyword that we use the metadata. If we can't do this, then we can't use the metadata for reporting. Or we have to drop these keywords and these indicators, which are very meaningful to us. Now, on this second one, as the national, so 2 indicators, or 2 keywords, 1 national keyword and 1 regional keyword, allowing you to take the metadata sets and to say whether a data set has a national coverage and is being managed by a national authority, or whether a data set has a regional coverage and is being managed by a regional authority. In the case of Austria, if you got 9 Bundeslanden providing regional data sets that are the reference data sets for your country, same for Belgium. You got 3 regions providing possible 3 data sets with all the reference data, because the authority is with the regions to provide the data. You can put regional. And then we know there has to be 3 data sets from Belgium to have a national coverage. There are 3 regional data sets, there are 9 Austrian data sets to provide the national coverage. If you tag with the national one, then we know you got the national data set. And that's very useful from a point of view from the Commission, but also from the member states, other national administrations, that you look for, give me the national data sets, give me the regional reference data sets, just based on 1 keyword. And why this keyword again? Because that's one of the few, not the few, there are a few elements in the metadata that are searchable, but the keywords, by example, are very searchable and can be indexed. So it goes very fast to metadata as well. So we introduced this as a metadata element, but that, of course, imposes some additional burden on the member states. So it does mean that member states have to start tagging their data sets with additional metadata keywords. 1, for example, for a priority data set, for which the code list is provided by the GRC, and then also providing these national regional keywords as well. So it's an additional burden that you have that we think should be part of the maintenance of your metadata, but it adds additional burden, that's true. But at the other way, we also drop the triennial reporting obligation, and we're also dropping a lot of the other indicators, so it should, well, more or less compensate, we hope. But that's up for discussion in the different bodies again. So on the country fishes, I think I already had provided most of the information, but the objective is actually to actually release this country fish and to provide you with a more comprehensive document on your performance on the implementation of the INSPIRE directive. At the same time, it also allows you to compare your progress against other countries, other member states as well. So besides the country feature, for every country, we also provide the EU overview feature. Now, because of this solid and similar structure of these country fishes and the streamlining of the content of these country fishes, it's quite easy for us to bring them all together in an EU overview dashboard and do some trends analysis on the common implementation. Also to identify the major implementation gaps and issues you have with the implementation. this is how it looks like. It's a lot of smileys or non-smileys and green and orange and red saying you're doing good, you're doing well in the middle, medium, or you're doing performing very well. And you also provided some trends. You promised to do something about this, so you got a positive trend, or it was worse in the past. So it's a lot of information being very synthesized in a visual way in a dashboard, which is a perfect instrument for your managers to see how you're doing on the implementation on this European Act. So, and we provided one in 2017 based on the data we had from 2016. It was a very difficult and long exercise because it was the first time that we did it. But hopefully by having this new reporting system, this should go much easier in the future. And I hope by 2019, 2020, we can start with a continuous provision of country fishes and these dashboards to the member states on their implementation. So it's still ongoing. So I can't present you with the final regulation. Ongoing discussions in the INSPIRE MIG and the INSPIRE committee last June. We are gathering still some comments from the member states, and we'll stop with gathering the comments by the end of September. And in October, the Commission will decide on the procedure, whether it will be a voting in a committee in November or December, or whether we'll have a written procedure. Difference is on timing. If we have a written procedure in October, we can finalize in November, then it's achievable, then it's doable to have a legal act by February. If not, then we end up somewhere in summer. We're also looking at new elections, so it's at a certain point when the elections, European elections will be, and the new Commission will come in, everything dies for a while. So it freezes. We don't do anything anymore. I know we do a lot, of course, but not on the legal aspect. So they're not going to be legal acts published for a while. So I think February is a nice deadline to be focused on. But then I think we should get to a consensus more or less by the end of November. And then we do the translations, which will take another month, and then it has to be published. And when it's published, it's actually going into force. So that's more or less the status of play on the new regulation. I think it's a very promising regulation. We still have to discuss the additional burden created by the keywords. That's under discussion. I think we should be able to fix this one as well, some way or the other. But I think we made a big move on making INSPIRE one leading. And a leader in streamlined reporting and minimizing the burden on the member states. And I think if we can work this way on a lot of directives by providing, for example, real-time data on the air quality directive by using the monitoring stations rather than member states aggregating data and reporting, same thing there. Just using the data that's already available, reuse the data, only once that we can actually make your life and our lives a lot easier and provide a lot of meaningful information. So that's it from my side. I hope it wasn't too long, but I would really like to open the floor and to get your ideas and insights and feedback on, if allowed, Vlado. I know I'm allowed to? Okay. Alex?
You've identified national and you've identified regional. That could be a problem in some places like the UK, where you've got national, you've got regional, and then below regional, you've got local things. Are you going to allow additional things like local?
Yeah, local was in there when we started with the first draft of the regulation, but then based on the discussion we had in the MIC and committee, we decided to drop local because it is not in the interest of the Commission, to be honest. That was the general message. It's good to have local data, and it's very valuable because it provides with the lowest level of granularity of the data and detail, probably timely updated, but in a sense, from a user perspective, at European level, it's very difficult to use local data and to aggregate the local data.
But there's no requirement under the directive to aggregate that data.
There is a requirement on the directive that the local authorities have to provide the data when there is a legal act that mandates them to provide the data. There is no obligation to aggregate, but the obligation, of course, is on the user. If you want to make use of the data, you have to aggregate. I rather aggregate 3 data sets at regional level than 50,000 at local level with all the issues that you have on models. Yeah.
What I'm saying, though, is that there is no requirement on a regional authority to aggregate the local authority data.
No, but it's a constitutional setup of a member state. For example, in Belgium, you have 3 regions that are responsible for INSPIRE implementation. They did the transposition. Same in Germany, same in Austria. So you will have the regional authorities, and it's not the Commission, but that's the subsidiarity, how the constitutional setup is in the member states. So, but that's reality. Oula?
I
So
think the
Vlado
last
is
one,
actually,
because we will need
Vlado
to
is
move
also
on.
master of ceremony. He counts the questions and he will say when it's over.
No pressure. Yeah, Ulla National Contact Point of Denmark. Let me start by saying this is a really, really important draft, and it takes away a lot of burdens, and it simplifies actually our tasks. So thumbs up for that. The devil is always in the detail. I have a question about the metadata regulation versus the monitoring and reporting regulation. Why is it not transposed into the metadata regulation when it is new metadata elements?
Yeah, well, two things. So first and for all, if we have to change the metadata regulation, we have to ask the permission on the cabinet to change the legal act. In this current condition that we're not allowed to change anything anymore because of the upcoming elections. So we had to go for these two regulations, meaning the report metadata monitoring regulation and the interoperability regulation, but not for the metadata. So this will be a timing issue. That means that we will not be able to change. If we change the metadata regulation, then we will not be able to have an updated monitoring and reporting decision by next year. That's for sure. Another thing is, and then we're also stuck with the triennial reporting, whatever the alignment proposal we do. But it's kind of connected as well. On the other side, it's to say also discussion on we are using metadata now as the main, as a core component to report and to monitor. So it's normal that we actually introduce new metadata. We didn't introduce new metadata elements. We were very careful with that one, but we additionally asked you to provide some information through metadata for monitoring and reporting, rather than providing it through an Excel file to the Commission. But that's the keywords. So the question is, can you actually introduce a metadata obligation through a reporting regulation? I think that's your question in general. And that's the discussion that we had with the legal service. I already discussed this with Mark very briefly today as well, because you're right when you raise these things. I had a discussion with the legal service on that one, and they said within the context of the metadata regulation that set forward for the obligation of the keyword element, you're allowed for monitoring and reporting issues or use to provide this or to ask for these elements. It's still up for discussion, I think, and I think we should, and Mark said it as well, maybe it's good that you have something in written that actually proves this to the member states, that we can go forward with this. I had the same discussion with other people as well. Some member states don't have an issue because some member states have streamlined their offering and have limited their offering to a fair amount of data sets which are manageable. In the case of France, when you have thousands of data sets, I can imagine that even on regional and national level, it's a difficult exercise to actually provide these keywords and start tagging all these data sets. So we have to be sure, we also have to be sure from our side that if we push through this regulation, that we have the legal foundation to do so. For the moment, we had the validation by the legal service on adding these keywords in metadata or using the metadata keyword element to provide this additional information under the reporting regulation. So I'm fine with it for the moment, but since you raised the question again, I'm more than happy to ask the legal service for, again, a validation, a firm validation on this aspect of the regulation. I think it's important. Yeah. And
okay.
even then, we might still have to look how we can, in a meaningful and easy way, provide these keywords and tag these keywords. But that's something that we, together, have to learn each other and share information on how to identify these data sets and how to tag them and so on and so on. Yeah. Sorry, Vlado.
We should move on. Thanks, Yuri, for the nice presentation. Okay, so the next one will be actually from my side. Together with the colleagues from GRC and also together with Yuri. So basically, in parallel, let's say, process together with the drafting of the new regulation, we also started to think how we will develop, from the technical point of view, the system to digest this new regulation and to support the new regulation. So in the lights of automatic harvesting of metadata and automatic calculation of the monitoring indicators. So I will not repeat what Yuri already said. You all know how the current system is working. Also, Jose mentioned it before. What we introduced last year are already country fishes, and I think this was the first result of the subgroup 2016.2. that we discussed, and also we provided as a subgroup a lot of suggestions for the improvement which are now in this draft new regulation. So we are still waiting basically for this new regulation to come into the force. However, as I said, we started to think how we can, from the technical point of view, in GRC, as a technical coordinator of INSPIRE, how we can support and how we can develop the new monitoring and reporting system. So basically, we already start some preparation work. So as Yuri said, if everything goes well, so we probably will have a new regulation in spring 2019, or maybe later, we will see. So basically the monitoring part will be based on the automatic calculation of indicators out of the metadata. So, and together we need also to develop the online system for management and maintenance of the country fishes. You all know that the country fishes in the current version, you have only the PDF, static PDF files. So the idea is also to allow member states also to update the information in an online system, and then together with the indicators calculated automatically from the monitoring, we will basically put all together into the country fish. So that's basically the idea, what we want to develop, and we already, you will see, started some work. So basically, in the current discussion between DG Environment, GRC, and the European Agency, actually we are considering that probably 2019 will be the transition year. So most probably the both system will be still on, so which means that you will go through the European Environmental Agency as you did in the past, but also we will probably testing the new system, and it will be also a nice playground to us to see if it's in line, so the results from the automatic harvesting based on the INSPIRE Geo portal, new INSPIRE Geo portal, which was basically launched today, and the data which are coming from the reporting, so from the European Agency. There are many discussions still, and we are just now about to reactivate the subgroup 2016.2. It will be a new subgroup, but Yuri already mentioned 2018.1 to support this technical implementation. Basically, we will start our discussions already today. We plan to have a meeting immediately after this session, but since we don't want to miss the icebreaker, so probably we will postpone it for tomorrow, or we can also start to discuss during the icebreaker. Just a bit joking. Okay, but nevertheless, what we already started to do, we started to think how this workflow will go. So these are basically just ideas. So of course there will be a lot of discussion, especially in the subgroup now, how this new system we will develop. So it's a conceptual, let's say, design of the new monitoring reporting system. So basically we would like to use INSPIRE Geoportal harvesting as a main central component of the INSPIRE infrastructure. As we heard today, if you were on the session before, we are already doing harvesting on the daily basis practically from all basically catalogs from the member states, the National Discovery Services. The question is, for example, on the timestamp, so will we stay on the 15th of May? So, for example, if we go for automatic monitoring, we can basically do it every day, or we can fix the 1st of January, and to say 1st of January, so it's up to be agreed inside the subgroup. And then basically we will do automatic calculation of the monitoring indicators, which will provide then the draft dashboard with graphs and indicators. And of course, we will not publish this, Commission will not publish this just like this. So the first, we would like to ask member states to check what is in these indicators, and basically to say if it's okay or so basically after the endorsement of the member states, then we will go to the part of EC evaluation, which will be done by DG Environment, and then we will do the draft of the country fish. which again will be sent to member states for their endorsement. And then at the end, if everything is fine for the member states and of course for the Commission, Commission will publish it as a complete country fish. So basically we will have two flows of information, one automatic calculation of indicators, and on the second one we will getting data from you, from the member states, so you will be asked basically to update the country fishes. So existing country fishes, which will be already put into the online management system, so every national contact point, so the people who are doing monitoring will be able to log in basically and to change the data in the country fish if something is to be changed. But of course, you will be able to do it not only once a year. So basically, with every change, you will be able to log in into the system. So for example, the email address is changing or whatever. You don't need to wait 1 year to do this change. So basically, you will be allowed to do it on when changes occurred from your side. What's the idea? So very simple architecture, what we want to use. So basically, you saw already today, many of you, the new INSPIRE Geo portal. Basically, it's not, I would say, not the new Geo portal, it's just the new front end of the Geo portal. So basically, the back end of the Geo portal is still there. So we are developing currently in the GRC many thematic viewers. So there is, you saw this morning, there is a thematic viewer for priority data sets, there is a thematic viewer for INSPIRE data teams. So we see the new thematic viewer which will serve basically monitoring purposes. So just for the calculation of the monitoring indicators. Probably in the moment, we are also investigating how we can reuse Kibana as a dashboard system. So just to do the visualization on the dashboard. And of course, this will be integrated all together with the country fish system and published through the INSPIRE knowledge base. So that's the basically idea. The first prototype, we can say. What we started currently is to discuss different kind of requirements. Basically, we see three main, let's say, users in this workflow. First of all, we have a Commission, European Commission. Then we have, of course, member states, national contact points. And then we have a public. So public users, whoever wants to go and look at the results of monitoring or country fishes. So basically, I will not go through. So these are just the first ideas, what the new requirements should be. We will discuss it in details within the new subgroup, which will be established. We expect to have a first kickoff probably beginning of November in ISPRA, where we will start to discuss those requirements and to agree on the requirements for different stakeholders in this process. So as I said, we have Commission on the one hand, then the member states. Of course, they have different requirements for the system, what they want, so that they can edit, validate, and so on and so on. Again, I will not go here into the details, so these are just the first ideas coming out of the first discussion between GRC, DG Environment, and EEA. And then at the end, of course, it will be publicly available country fishes, so we expect also that the public, policy masters, whoever will come to visit the country fishes, they are already reading it and using in the member states, we know this. So probably the public users would like to view the fish, to download, and so on, the data. So basically, this is it more or less. So work is already in the progress. So we started to play with the fishes. So we already basically transferred all the existing fishes into an online management system. We are playing a little bit, testing how it can work. So as you see on the right side, basically this will be some kind of the interface where you will be able to log in and basically then to edit different parts of the country fishes. Then the parts with the indicators will come automatically, and basically this will be then given to you for your first endorsement before any publishing. After this, it will be the evaluation from the DG Environment, and then basically the final publishing. Yeah, so the work is in progress. Let's see. So we hope that more or less we should be able to have the system already ready when the regulation will be adopted. That's the best scenario. So if we have the new regulation spring next year, we should be able immediately basically to have also the new system in place. But however, as I said, we expect that the next year will be transitional. So probably both system, existing one and the new one will be in use. So all for me. Any questions?
Thank you. First, Marc Lebet for the French point of contact, sorry. So we support the proposal we made, I believe, a great job together as the European Commission, as a member state. And if we solve the issue Ula said before, I will be very happy to support the position. And my surprise is to see that you propose to compute the indicator. And it was in a former draft proposal of the European Commission, and the member states welcome this proposal so freshly that the European Commission removed it. And so what we said before, and I have to repeat it, I'm sorry for that, never I will propose to my minister something compute first by the European Commission. It is the report for and by the member state, and we have the responsibility of everything on it. So I think we will have to compute everything too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I think it's just a nice offer from our side, but I think Yuri wants to comment this one. Yuri, can we get the mic?
Yeah, Mark, I think specifically for France, we have provided a button that says calculate indicators when you click on it. It's just one button. I think that's part of the, but you're right, but discussion is whether you will use the system to calculate the indicators or you will pre-calculate the indicators yourself. I think that's the discussion. And I think if you agree that you will use the same system for calculation used by all the other member states, then it's just the provision of a function that allows you to calculate and evaluate your own indicators before Commission can view the indicators. That's something that can be introduced, I guess.
So my presentation will be about one flow of information for protected site reporting, CDDA. I'm giving this presentation with the help of Wim. Where is he? There he is, and Rob Hendricks and Torsten, who is over there. Thank you for that. And just one question: who in the audience is also for their member state involved in the CDDA reporting? Then I can see if I get some difficult questions from you guys. Okay, thank you. So, a brief content, what is CDDA? I'll skip to this, and then you'll find it out yourself. So, the CDDA is the common database of designated areas. It's there to report for nature reserves, protected landscapes, national parks, etc. It's been going on since 1999, and the contributions are not only from EU countries but also from other countries. Where you can see they don't have INSPIRE yet, but I guess it already sees that INSPIRE is a bit expanding out over only the EU members. So the workflow, the data goes from the source to the EU, and basically what I mean with the INSPIRE data sets. From then it goes, at least that's how we proposed it now, to the EEA, and then it goes to the IUCN. When I started, and I'm just recently involved into INSPIRE, I didn't understand this complete workflow, and only when you understand the complete workflow, that has a big impact in your reporting and also how to communicate with people, and that will come back into the presentation later as well. So now I'm diving into a bit more detail with the specific countries. How did we manage to gather the data and deliver it to the EEA? So it started with basically if we break down the organization, the data sets, then it's provided by more than 17 organizations which were involved. And then we created one protected INSPIRE data set for protected areas, which basically consisted out of 4 different data sets. But for the CDDA reporting, we only had to use 2 of them. So that's why we had to break down the INSPIRE dataset again to use only those 2. And then we added another dataset from the provinces, the Nature Network of the Netherlands. And then we combined that into one. And then we also used the type 2 data, which is not in INSPIRE, but only in the CDDA reporting. And then we combined that to one. And that's where HAIL came into play, and they helped us with developing that one data flow. But then when we had reported to the CDDA, we had to break down that one data set, GML, which we created, and provided to the CDDA into a type 2 and a type 1. So you can see it's a lot of breaking down and adding data again, but in the end, we think it works easier. I see a lot of people laughing, so. But now I'll go into a little bit more detail about the technical part of the delivery, where we had the Natura 2000 sites, which were 160 records. The national parks were 20 records. And then we had kind of a new issue where we used to report like 20 or 30 extra data, extra records. Now it were more than 40,000 records, because all the provinces did quite some good work, and they created a lot of different polygons. But of course, that's what you can see. Technically, that didn't cause any issues, but only practical with the EEA. They only had 2,000 CDDA IDs available for us. So that's why we ended up creating it into one multi-polygon. But then again, that one multi-polygon had some geometry issues, and then we still ended up in. I think all these issues can be resolved, and I think for next year we'll provide it on a municipality level, etc. So it will only be 400 extra records. But it's those kind of practical things which makes you wonder if you can get there in time and report it in time. So just to go over with the total delivery data set, a process in 2018. We adjusted for the new data model in 2018. I hope there won't be a new data model in 2019, because that requires some extra time, but we'll see about that. It's also going into the organization and making sure that everybody involved, not only the 17 organizations, but also our own line manager, etc., were all involved and supporting us and giving us the time to do our work. We created a workflow with HAIL that worked all fine, and that's now completely updated again. We met with the other data source partners. We talked to the ministry about the policy, to making sure that when we deliver the dataset with the INSPIRE datasets, which was new, that at least there was no discussion about the content, because the content was already in the INSPIRE datasets. Then we would only have some discussions about what to deliver and a timestamp, but not discussion, should this be included or should that be excluded. That will saved a lot of time as well. So we compared the differences with 2017, which of course is important that if there are differences that we explain that to the EEA in a proper way. We discussed the ID issues, and we'll hopefully manage that better in 2019. and we tried to do some quality control about the data set which ended up in the CDDA data set and also in the WDPA data set, the World Database of Protected Areas. So, and then now we're starting to prepare for 2019. Here you can see, if you now look at the data sets themselves, they're more or less available at 4 different places. We have them in our national data set. We have the INSPIRE data set. We have them in the CDDA where you can download them. And we also they're also available at the WDPA data set. And there are also some differences. I'll come back to that conclusion. But you can see, because of the timestamp and the delivery differences, if I was the public and I would start looking at those data sets, I would put them all together, then I see too many differences, which probably I wouldn't understand. So the key points for 2019, we had a few issues with the transformation of the data, where there was a shift of 120 meters, which for any geodetic person would see that would know what the cause of that would be. And we looked at the CDDA IDs records, and we'll try to make sure that the mandatory fields are even felt better. And yeah, if we find some issues in the WDPA dataset, we're still looking how we can report that back to the EEA. So on the technology, yeah, we worked fine with Hail, and I think Hail provided an easy way of harvesting and providing it on the technical level. And the geometry validation, where we work with Esri, that differs from the geometry validation in a GML. I guess for technical people, that should all be known issues. And I'll go to the findings or the change in the mindset. I think the communication with the data source partners, that took up a lot of time. And yeah, I'm glad to see that one of the data partners is here as well. But so it worked out, and we have a much better relationship now. The data source partners, they still need a clear deadline, also because they're working with other partners which they need to make sure to deliver it. And yeah, as a Netherlands enterprise agency, yeah, we're open for a new way of delivering through the INSPIRE extension. So not only using the INSPIRE dataset, but using the extension on the INSPIRE, and hopefully the EEA and the GRC will work on that and help us making sure that will be an easier way of reporting. And on the consistent data sets, one of the important, what I mentioned before, where you have the data available on country level, on INSPIRE, EU level, in the CDDA and the WDPA, they all have a different timestamp because of the way the data is delivered. But if I look at it from a public, then I would still have troubles understanding what is correct and how would I need to interpret those different data sets. So the overall conclusions, most time is spent on communication. Using INSPIRE datasets ensure a more consistent delivery. So we don't have any discussion when we deliver the CDDA dataset on the content, because that's all covered because it's in the INSPIRE datasets already, which we harvest to do the CDDA delivery. And using Hail helps for the documenting and delivery for next year. And when using INSPIRE datasets, QC remains important. And if the public really wants to start using these datasets, then we need to find a way to better put metadata or get them one dataset instead of 4 different datasets. That's basically it.
Thank you, Arjen. Are there any questions? Yeah.
2 slides ago, I saw you saying you're delivering the INSPIRE version or dataset 6 months after you deliver the country dataset.
Yeah.
Why don't you just publish the ETL from Hail to be reused by any user? He can do the extraction and translation himself.
Yes, so we deliver to the CDDA once a year. That's just a once a year reporting. And for INSPIRE, we can update it also directly afterwards already. But we don't want to update, so we have the INSPIRE data sets for the protected areas, and we'll update that even sooner than 6 months, but I think you have the option to change them only after 6 months. But so in that sense, you have to make sure either you update it once, but it can be a delay of 6 months while you're still within all the regulations. And making sure that's in the metadata or there's some understanding of it, yeah.
That's the one. Okay. So Fabio from Spatineo.
Yes.
Please,
thank
the
you.
floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. I have the challenge to keep you before the ice break party, but I will be also quick. This is something that we started last year in the INSPIRE, and we presented similar, but we slightly changed the methodology, but I will talk about how we got the quality award for the INSPIRE services. And also I'll have the awards here, so it's for the organization. So let's see how that goes. I hope I keep you curious and in the room. This is what I will cover. So a little bit the sequence. I will jump on that because you see anyway. Spatineo was established in Finland in 2011. That's where we are. Our mission is to make spatial data platforms widely used and reliable. And you will understand that once I speak about our tools and how it works. And obviously the quality award, how was the methodology to get that. And also we provide cloud-based solutions for quality assurance for spatial web services. And also we develop a methodology for the impact assessment of the implementation for the spatial data platforms. So jump into the monitoring agent, which is the base of everything in the very beginning when the work started. We started to reach spatial web services around the globe. Last year, when I made this presentation, was around 50,000, the number we got there. So currently, we have 90,000 spatial web services in our directory. Obviously, they are not all INSPIRE services, but they are all around the globe, and they are public. And it's almost 1.5 million data sets that we are reaching with that network of monitoring. So in that sense, we can pretty much say that it's a reliable way to measure the availability and the performance, the response time of the services, because we are generating a response to a get map or a get feature. It goes to the spatial element of the service. And for this ranking, we use the INSPIRE services only, obviously, and basically the information is retrieved from the directory, which is an area in our website. It's publicly accessible, and you can go there and check the quality of your services instantly in the last week and in the current year, freely available. The criteria you use for the quality awards, first, it has to be an INSPIRE service. Second, it has to be identified by our network in our directory. If you maybe don't see, if you go to talk to us to see the complete list that you can have access to, you don't see your organization, you can maybe go to the directory and add the services there. Eventually, they might not have been reached for us. But the criteria was that they were identified and measured from the 1st of August last year until 31st of July this year. So that's the period that we measured for the awards. Also, obviously, we count the downtime in the period, the level of interruptions. If you have maintenance announced, that wouldn't count. But some of our customers have that. And also, we got the minimum of total 25 data offerings. We had this minimum cut set to measure that. And also, we have some metadata validation just to rectify the quality of the availability that we found. So there was a combination of availability, and we used the GRC validator, but not only that, and then we normalized the ones with the fewest errors and the highest number of errors from 0 to 1, so we could be compatible with the availability level, which is also measured from 0 to 1, which is 100%. And then we took the assumption, the top 5% with the fewest errors would imply 1% less in the validation score. So that's, if someone got 99 as a validation score, is because they got in the range of 5% of errors in the highest level. Obviously, the idea was to penalize the ones with the highest number of errors. Well, so the final combined score, which we use it to actually produce the awards, was like for each service, the availability level multiplied by the validation score obtained according to that, those assumptions and that methodology. So the rank is the average of the combined score for all the services of that organization. So, okay, let's get some numbers about. There are 34 in our directory. There are 34,861 as for last week when I got the numbers. There are 12,082 services qualified. There were like 9,000 last year. So this means that these 12,000 are the ones that we could measure for that period, for the year. There are 199 organizations listed for that period with the services. There were 136 last year. There were 125 qualified for the award, which means 125 organizations with services above 25 offerings. Data offerings, and there were 95 last year, and there were 106 organizations at above 99% availability level for that period, and last year was 55. So that is a big achievement that I think all the organizations that are concerned about quality of services and availability provided by the services should be like a bit of applause for the organizations overall. I think some of us, or maybe few or maybe many, but some of us like complain about the difficulties, but also this is an achievement for all of the organizations right there. So that's something that I was surprised also, but okay, let's go to the winners, and they are from different industry sectors. We are awarded first to the third place. We got the list of top 10. That's on purpose. You're not going to be able to see, and there are only numbers there. So we will talk about the list of top 10 as well, because it's worth mentioning. I have the awards for the three first places. And also we awarded the best improvement in availability. So that organization that had the highest improvement in terms of availability only, because we cannot, obviously difficult to measure the validation, but the quality of the validation. So let's see who the winners are. In third place, we have JRC. The availability, it's 99.9276%, which is quite an achievement. And that means only 6 hours and 40 minutes of interruption in the period. So that's, who can take the certificate from GSC? Anyone? Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm surprised.
Yeah, well, the combined score was 0.98 altogether, as I mentioned. The second is an organization from Austria, Tyrol, the region. Anyone? Is anyone from Austria here? Or anyone that knows someone in Tyrol? Okay, I don't need to check luggage again. Let me see if that's the one. No, that's another one. Okay. 1 second. Yeah. So you are from Tyrol?
Yes, not from Tyrol, but from Austria.
Okay.
But I know the guys. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the big winner, surprisingly, is also from Austria. Sorry, you have to come back here. It's an organization called DORIS. They provide, you probably know DORIS as well. Yeah.
These are both the federal states of Austria.
Yeah, they provide a lot of, quite a lot of services. So they have 99.79% availability, which is only 2.37 days of interruption, with the combined score, the highest one. So they deserve it. So that's for them. So now you check luggage. Sorry for that. Yeah, I can give you that, no problem. Don't worry. I can give you actually this one that is probably better. I'll give you at the end. Okay, moving on to the best improvement. Other organizations in the top 10 that are worth mentioning, and I would like to congratulate this region in Spain, Alava. Yeah, there is this in Slovakian. Anyone from Slovakian? Is the, according, as far as I could understand, is the water management organization. Yeah. And also the Lyon. It's also anyone from Lyon or from that neighborhood. And 7, Wallonie. Applause for those. Sweden, the the Central Statistic Institute. Anyone from Sweden here? Also the Portuguese Institute of Sea and Atmosphere. Anyone from that organization present? No? And London. Yeah, they are here. Yes. Unfortunately, no awards for that, but that's worth mentioning. They are quite an achievement to be in the top 10 of that many number of organizations. Moving to the best improvement, it's surprising. For the service availability only, it's the Gibraltar geoportal. It's a tiny place, but they could come from 88% availability to 99.76. So that means from 42 days to only 21 hours. It's not even a day of interruption in the period. So that's quite a lot. Well, if you want to see the full list, or if you want to get more details about the methodology, we can talk. We are in the exhibition area. You can also, if you don't see your services in the list, you can add on the directory. This is the page. And some of the hints to improve the quality that we can talk briefly is that you have to describe well the service that is provided, the whole service, and the data set, title, abstract, keywords, You also have to make the appropriate number of data sets in the service, like one data set per service is too few, but 500 data sets in a service may be quite a lot, so that there must be a balance. Similar visualizations and data sets in the same service, that's also one hint that you can take. And name according to the grouping principle, that's also something that helps. And you can ensure the functionality, making tests with the applications and assuring compliance with the INSPIRE standards, of course, and testing the capability and the capacity of the services and ensure that is working fast and reliable 24/7. And I'm sure that obviously you know that we can help with that. Thank you, and I hope we make a good party. Thank you.